semi-rare, which gives me extra pleasure.
That's cool. So I'm just going to start by providing some introductions, and then we will be passing the chair over to our chair. So I'm going to start with our committee members. Hi, Beth. I'll start with the chair of the Bluewater Park Local Advisory Committee, and start with a thank you to our volunteers who are liaising between council staff and the community, and the time and effort they put in to supporting everybody. So thank you. Rob Duffy, can you put your hand up? This is the chair of the Bluewater Park LAC. And then we have Michael Rushton, also on the Bluewater Park LAC. And who's Jerry with all the books.
That's me. Hi.
Member and brand new member Chana. Thank you for joining, recently appointed. And for staff, we have Patrick Graham is the Director of Engineering, so running up the Public Works. Annette Frischman is our Utilities Coordinator. And our Chief Financial Officer is Raj Hare. A wave. And then Aoife Cashman is our Finance Officer, who's there to support us as well. And finally, Councillor Alison Morris, the Council Liaison for all our water committees. And Glenn Skierman is here. He's the consultant who's been hired and was previously Director of Engineer, so very knowledgeable. And thank you to members of the community who've come to observe. We have public comments near the beginning, and at the end, there'll be a question period as well. So we can start the meeting. Rob, if you'd like to take over.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steph. Thanks for everything. We'll begin the meeting here for the Bluewater Park Water System Local Advisory Committee meeting today, Tuesday, December 8th. 3 p.m. Hopefully it won't run over too long a time. Thanks everybody for attending today and on this rainy, dreary day. And I know some of us are really appreciative of the amount of rain that we're getting this fall to help replenish the aquifers throughout the island. But Steph, one thing I'd request of you, could you kind of keep us on track for the timing throughout,
sure,
so that we've got lots of time to make it to the end and cover off as much as possible? It'd be much appreciated.
Sure.
So, okay, so to start off, I guess approval of the agenda. And the first item is introduction of late items. Anything to bring forward, Steph?
I have nothing.
Okay. Good. And is it here that we asked for public comments a little bit later? So I guess everybody is the recommendation that the Bluewater Park Water System Local Advisory Committee approve the agenda and late items agenda, if applicable, for the December 8th, 2020 meeting. And do I have a seconder for that? Sure. Mike? And then all in favor?
Okay.
Carried.
Perfect.
How's that?
Perfect. Good.
Okay,
Sorry, Rob.
so it's kind of odd where we elect a chair at the end of the previous year, and then there's nothing really throughout, and then you've got to get up to speed on this again. So it's an interesting learning, definitely. So it's good.
You're doing great.
So now we're going to move on to adoption of the minutes. Minutes of October 30th, 2020. Jen?
Sorry, 2019.
2019. So there's that little bit of a hiccup there. So this is the Bluewater Park System Local Advisory Committee meeting that was held in 2019, October 30th. Fellow committee members, you had probably a refresher read through it. Any concerns that you've got? Questions? Shauna?
Just if I look at the date, so October 30th, 2019, under questions from the chair was actually a response from to the Bowen Island municipality. Just a question, because it says one of the responses is to a question about aquifer recovery.
Yes.
So it's stated on October 30th, 2019, that the aquifers have recovered since the leak was fixed. However, there's an engineering report dated in December of the same year that states that further studies are needed to make a determination on whether the aquifers have recovered. So I just want to double check that everyone's
Okay.
happy. It's Glenn's response that there's a statement in there that someone is saying the aquifers have recovered. I just think that that's a bit, should be clarified.
Right.
Given there's an engineering report that says subsequent to this meeting, that says otherwise.
Okay, Glenn, do you have a comment on how I could have misinterpreted that?
Off mute.
Could you,
Like, was it a reference to something else?
I'd like to see it myself. Can you share screens or?
Sure, I can, yeah. Can you see it?
I can now, yeah.
Little small, okay, let's go to there. Do you know where it is, Channa?
Yeah, it's on, I don't know which page it is. So it's page 2, page 3, item 3.
Oh, here.
Yes.
So just,
Sorry.
Yeah, okay, so,
and then Glenn, I guess just to, if that's the statement, that's a statement, but on
yeah,
December 5th of the same year, conclusion bullet point 4 of the study that was carried out by EXP states that continuous groundwater monitoring is recommended in one or more of the BWP wells to determine actual seasonal aquifer water level recovery during the winter spring of 2019-2020. So it doesn't jive that someone is saying the aquifers are recovered and then the engineering report says otherwise.
yeah. No, I think the item 3 there was probably misrepresented. Obviously, I can't recall, it's too long ago to know exactly, but I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have suggested the aquifers have recovered because there was no information to determine that. What I do remember was since the leak was fixed, the function of the reservoir and well production had stabilized, but I'm pretty sure I would not have indicated that the aquifer had recovered.
So what do we do? Delete point 3 or change it to say well production has stabilized since the leak was?
Yeah, and what happened during that time is with the 4 wells, wells 1 and 2 were pretty much permanently depleted, so they have not recovered at all. It's wells 1 and 2 that had somewhat come back into the fall once the rainy season started. And I believe it's, as stated here, 10 gallons per US gallon,
Yeah.
10 gallons per minute and 3.5 gallons.
Yeah, what I would suggest, staff, to be just more succinct and not raise additional questions is it would be more of the supply of water to the community had stabilized since the leak was fixed. There's various components to that one could argue, but essentially the supply of water to the community had stabilized.
By various supply means of our own wells, as well as water from King Edward Bay.
Less said, the better. That's the problem with.
Yeah, less the better, I agree in this case.
You like
Yeah,
that?
that's a good catch, Chad, out because really the wells have not recovered fully.
Are you guys watching me save this now?
We are.
How come you
Okay,
can?
let's not do that anymore. Can we vote on the minutes as amended?
Do any other comments from anybody in regard to the 2019 minutes? If not, do I have a seconder?
Yep. Hey again.
Mike?
Yep.
And all in favor?
Yep.
Carried.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, so next on the agenda would be public comments. So I see that we've got a few faces out here. What's the best process for this, Steph? For
So just, you can ask, does anybody have anything to say? If it's a crowd, I'll manage it, but if it's civilized, which I think it will be, or anyone in the public that has something to offer at the front? Maybe put up your hand. No, I think we're good for now.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll carry on with Patrick's report.
great. So we can move over to Public Works and the water utility utilities update from Patrick. Over to you, Patrick.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. So we were starting to talk a bit about this, but there was the Aquifer study following from the work that was done last year, looking at the Bluewater well field, where a comprehensive monitoring program of several wells in the Bluewater, Bowen Bay, King Edward Bay system, as well as a private well, were monitored starting in April. And we've just recently received a draft report that we're in the process of working with the hydrogeologists to finalize. In general, the aquifer itself is a healthy water source that most likely is capable of providing for the needs of all the residents that are drawing from it. The production from the aquifer is a lot better on further south in Bowen Bay and to a lesser extent in King Edward Bay than it is in Bluewater. There's also a substantial amount of existing storage in the King Edward Bay system. So we're currently working with Urban Systems, and Glenn is the project manager on the Urban Systems side for this project, to look at the first phase will be what is the best, technically, what is the best solution to resolve the supply, distribution, and storage issues that are facing the Bluewater system, as well as other water system improvements that would be needed for the west side systems. So that work is underway, and it's likely we're going to be looking at scenarios that involve combining systems, and there's going to be a need for public process involving the LACs of all of those systems, as well as broader community. Based on this current schedule, we expect to be in a position early next year, probably February, to be bringing forward some possible solutions for discussion with the community. So that's a priority for us. Another priority relating to the Bluewater system is to get to a place where we have some reliability, some confidence in the system integrity. In reviewing the flow monitoring information and the data that we do have on the system, it's clear there is still substantial leakage in the system that our staff are prioritizing, figuring out where those leaks are and what improvements are needed to address them. So that work is underway as well. So those are the main points in terms of work that's ongoing in the Bluewater system that relates to the Bluewater system. If there's questions about that, we can address those now.
I guess for me, probably a quick update on how the 6 wells are doing up in the well field on Mutiny Lane. 4 of the original and then 2 of the newly drilled ones. Was there any, I know that you had study or devices put in, monitoring devices put in the one primary well, but were manual dipping of the other wells just to see how they are being revitalizing, changing, that kind of thing. Has that been part of the aquifer study as well?
The focus was on, for the aquifer study, was on Bluewater well number 3, which is the best performing well. And there is capacity, it looks like there's capacity to achieve higher production from that well than we currently have. You know, and I believe that the recommendation from EXP is that there isn't really value in trying to pursue greater production from the other Bluewater wells. And it's unlikely that, well, I don't know if this is the case. We may not be able to meet the system demands from that well field. That's something that we're exploring further with EXP and with Urban Systems. And this is important to determine if we're getting into discussions about linking to other systems, to be able to show that this is a necessity in terms of meeting the basic level of service that everybody on a municipal system should expect. I don't know, Glenn, if you have anything further to add on that.
Yeah, I guess everything you said is correct. I guess the only things to add is that there's two aspects. One, we're looking sort of micro scale at each individual well that's currently drilled, and then we're looking at the aquifer as a whole. And the general findings are that the water is out there, but due to I guess less than optimal operation of some of the wells, some of them are compromised to the point where they are unlikely to be a long-term component of the system. So right now, EXP has generally identified the best producing wells and are making recommendations of how to improve and optimize those. So that's certainly our first step, is to make best use of the infrastructure that currently exists. And there's a number of recommendations coming out of that. Beyond that, then if it's deemed that those existing wells cannot meet the demand of the community, near term and long term, then we would need to then strategize on how else can we best access the water in the aquifer. So then it starts to look at strategic decisions of new well development, perhaps. But there hasn't been conclusion reached on that. There's a number of parameters and assumptions that have to go into the assessment, and that was the round of revisions, I guess, that Patrick spoke to, that we're working through the EXP to finalize that.
Yeah, there's a distinction between the sustainability and the health of the overall aquifer, and the some localized areas like the Bluewater well field that may not recover to the same extent. It's a fractured bedrock aquifer, and not a gravel aquifer that has very consistent properties across, across the extent of it. There can be very different conditions in one area from another.
Yeah, and I guess to add to that, just again, the different components. There's one element is to certainly look at the output potential of the well and distribution system, and then the other is the mass balance on the aquifer, because we need to ensure that the mass balance works on an annual cycle, recognizing that the inputs and outputs are not on the same pattern, but at the end of the year, any given year, we have to make sure that recharge volume is greater than withdrawal volume. So that's probably still the area that EXP is working on the most. I think it's pretty clear now on what the solutions are to optimize the existing infrastructure. The area that's still uncertain is the annual mass balance.
Fellow committee members, anything to add in regard to that? Shannon?
Yeah, Patrick and Glenn, really helpful. So if I just kind of play back, I think you should both know, so I'm a one issue committee member, and it's all around this issue. So I'm going to pay a lot of attention to this and hopefully bring to bear some assistance as necessary, or just some thinking. The way if I play this back, it's really great to hear the progress. My confidence is improving given where you guys are, what you're communicating on this. So really appreciate the level of transparency that the municipality is lending to us and to the committee and to the public. What I see is, what I heard from you, Patrick, is that overall this aquifer is healthy. Production's better in the south. And I think you did say that there is a level of water that's available for our current needs, but it would be good to see us communicate that very clearly as soon as that is complete, or in a nature that we can complete it, just to put to rest a lot of concerns that are circulating through at least our community, our neighborhood, but probably through the whole west side here, that there is sufficient water. We're going to get to the distribution and management of that water. That's a second phase, but I think putting this issue to rest of the availability of water, but ensuring, Glenn, as you put it, that it's current and future needs as well, and that we've incorporated all of the private users as well. So if we can put that issue to bed, I think the community will rest better as a whole. And I think then we can just really focus in on the collaboration, I think, as you put it, with the LACs, because to me, that just seems the next step as part of a process here. And I'm very thankful for it. And just kind of seeing it in that perspective of, I just envision, here we are, the overarching picture as you put it, Glenn, and then the LACs have different risks and balances and needs. And we've got to kind of look at the infrastructure that EXP is working on and figure out how we can maximize the existing systems that are in place to serve our current needs, and then consider future needs.
Yeah. No, you're very right. And that is going to be a focus. And we recognize that there's a governance and a fairness aspect to this, which we don't lose sight of and will be part of our reporting. But natural systems, the aquifer systems in particular, watershed boundaries, they don't operate with LAC boundaries. So
yep.
We first need to understand what is physically the current state, what is physically achievable, how is it best operated, where is the water available, how is it most best distributed, and then the governance aspect is certainly a big question, but it has to follow what is the optimum function to make sure that everybody has a sustainable supply of water.
Is there a timeline for completion of that report? I mean, if we can put to bed this issue, the broader issue,
Yeah, our timeline is what Patrick indicated is our target is somewhere in February is to really come with a good finding where our project is divided into a number of phases. And this phase is phase one, which is essentially doing the assessment and coming up with the concepts of what we feel the system should be configured. And then do our outreach with the LAC and their broader communities.
That's great. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to add to the point about the governance and fairness being important if we're talking about water from what are currently separate water systems supplying a broader system. We've had our LAC meetings with King Edward Bay and Bowen Bay and others, and there's I think also an element of fear there too, in terms of becoming linked to a very old system that we're not able to provide the confidence that it's not leaking. People don't want to see their water going into the ground. So I think that has to, in parallel with the work that we've been talking about that Glenn was referring to, that more detailed investigation of the system integrity and where the leaks are and where the highest risk distribution lines that need to be repaired and replaced are. That's also a big push that needs to go along with this.
And that would be part of the water system improvement design work that's going to be going on or starting now, proceeding to some preliminaries, what February you had indicated. Because essentially it's a program of replacing all the underground lines that feed everybody's residences over the coming years, and where the money comes from for that as well, and how we're going to get to that point. And we know it's not going to happen in 1 year or 2 years. It's going to have to be a step process, I'm expecting.
Yeah, and when we get to the budget part, we've at this point we've put in fairly substantial placeholder values, but it is a substantial effort.
Is that the one I put a big question mark beside when we get to it?
You can do that, yeah.
I should be on the hot seat for that.
Recognizing too the renewal that has to take place is our study is also just looking at improving service, and that includes improving firefighting capabilities, something that in particular Bluewater doesn't have. We've had some good conversations with the fire underwriters survey, and they've rated all the systems, and we had a good conversation with them. And in their eyes, many of the systems still meet a minimum standard, so that if service was improved, it still wouldn't influence insurance rates. But Bluewater Park and Eagle Cliff are the two that fire underwriter survey indicate that with improvements, they currently don't meet the minimum standard, and insurance rates could improve with improved service. So.
Yet that was a point when we did the connection to King Edward Bay 10 years ago that would alleviate that issue, but I guess it wasn't true.
Can I just
it's
make a
because
comment, please? Oh,
yeah.
sorry.
Jerry?
The mains.
Yeah, go ahead, Glenn.
I was just making a clarifying statement that supply and access to water would have improved with the connection to King Edward Bay, but the mains themselves are still highly deficient in the ability to convey that water. So I think that's probably still the hang up.
Can I just add to Rob's comment? The only putting the hydrant by the interconnected line, that only solved the problem for the houses near that particular hydrant, not for the rest of the system.
Because that was extremely low pressure that was at the far end of the Bluewater line, wasn't it, Allison?
Well, and the lines are too small too.
Yeah.
But anybody who
sorry, for Patrick and Glenn probably, what do you see as the future, short and long-term future of the reservoir?
The built tank reservoir in Bluewater?
The open reservoir.
The open reservoir. Well, I mean, we haven't focused on assessing it yet. I think the biggest issue is just gets into a water quality treatment issue. And that's my understanding as why it was decommissioned. It certainly is a supply source if push came to shove, but we'd have to factor in the need for treatment.
Or using it as non-potable for things like fire backup.
Yes, that's true. It could be used as an alternate to some non-potable uses. That's.
But hopefully that's the sort of thing we'll see in the urban systems report in February.
Yep, we're definitely looking at a number of different options, and I appreciate you raising the open reservoir.
Good. Yeah, my whole career just briefly has been in electrical power engineering and electrical utilities, and we've gone through a phase over the last couple of decades of utilities having to introduce more and more renewable resources, which are typically non-firm. So it becomes, as you made the point, Glenn, very well, I thought, of trying to match the problem of trying to match supply and demand. And more, the big electrical grid systems require the same sort of thing that I think we are looking at long term anyway. And that's, for me, in electricity, it would be a mega battery bank or a power storage system of some sort. In the case of our water, I think that that buffer has to be storage. Has to be increased storage facilities. We've got what, an 18,000 gallon tank, which we can drain in a day or two. So, I mean, it's just, I think that's one of the issues, and it's going to be a tremendous headache for you guys to try and match supply and demand when you don't have that battery bank or you don't have that 200,000 gallon tank.
Yeah, we're definitely looking at the storage issue.
Good, excellent.
And that's a point that's been, I think, brought up with the local area committees going back a couple of decades now. I think I saw in a previous minutes, 1994, somewhere there, that there was even requests for additional water tank storage back then too. So yeah, it's definitely, we all complain about we got a lot of water, but we just don't know how to hold it in place. It'll go to the ocean.
Yeah.
So. Should we move on to consultant breakdown? Patrick?
Sure.
Okay.
This was just providing the scope of work that we've hired Urban Systems to help us with. We had some good response from other consultants as well, and we ended up hiring Urban Systems. It involves water system improvements, not just for the Bluewater system, but a number of other water systems on the island as well. So we provided a draft of the breakdown of the costs, trying to be as fair as possible in attributing to the costs to the benefiting systems. We've really only awarded the phase one work at this point. The costs relating, these are just consultant costs. The actual construction costs would be something else. And without really understanding what exactly the solutions we're going to be moving forward with are, it's difficult to pin down exactly what those phase 2 and 3 costs will be. But if there's any questions about that, we can address that.
Any questions from the committee? Okay.
I feel we're following a process, and we just keep going for the moment. See where it takes us in February.
Okay. My question, Patrick, would be is how has the amounts been divided up? Has it been by a user percentage per system? Because that's traditionally how costs like this have been split between a larger type of contract in the past. Or is it based on the complexity of the system that's going to need more work versus using King Edward Bay as an example, quite a bit newer system that probably doesn't need as much focus. So is that how they've been providing some estimated pricing, or has it been just divided all up by so many users per community?
Well, we have the scope divided up into two major water projects, one looking at the east side system and the Eagle Cliff and potentially connecting that to the Cove Bay system. And then the west side water system improvements, there's really two major parts to that. One is looking at the supply and distribution and storage issues encompassing Bowen Bay, King Edward Bay, and Bluewater. And then the other is, we had initially thought that maybe it would make sense to look at a Tunstall Bay integration as well. In the preliminary reviews, we've decided that would be a very challenging connection to make. And so we're looking at that as a reservoir replacement for replacing the existing reservoir at the end of its life with a larger one. So essentially looking at the rest of that west side water project, we've divided the cost between Bowen Bay and Bluewater based on number of connections, and left at this stage anyway for the phase one work, we've left King Edward Bay out of that cost calculation. The reason for that was the point that they made, which is valid, that if we were just operating, from their perspective, if we were just operating our own system and we didn't have to supply water to Bluewater, then we wouldn't have concerns about supply or storage or distribution. So we took that to be a fair point and divided the costs as I've described.
Okay. And then a lot of the studies that took place last year by EXP and Urban Systems, with the crisis going on, that's of course pulled forward information that's helping in regard to solving some of the problems.
Yeah, that study was shared between the three water systems, and then there was a portion of that work, about not quite half of it, between a third and a half, was paid for by the Arbutus Ridge developer.
Oh, that's the Aquifer study, right? No, I'm talking the EXP Urban Systems studies of the Bluewater during the crisis last year, the December 15th
year before.
final report. So that would have collected a lot of data information at that point, correct, Patrick? Or sorry, Glenn, sorry. Would have been the basis for.
Sorry, I was unmuting myself. To be honest, I don't know how those were ultimately, my responsibilities as acting director were quite varied, and maybe Raj can be the most appropriate person to indicate how those costs were distributed.
Raj, would you be able to address this?
Yeah, I was just trying to unmute myself there.
Sorry, thank you.
So you're talking about the cost during the water shortage period, right? Looking for those costs?
More the consultant costs and the studies that was done. I think what the final report was December 15th, correct, Glenn? Yes. By EXP Urban Systems, that collected a lot of information, so that would have been brought forward to help now develop the next steps of the water system improvement design work based on the existing information that was already found. So just making sure that we're utilizing that information appropriately, and the costs that we've already paid forward, I think a tune of 60-some thousand last year. I believe, or it was up there, that's factored into the cost that we've already put into the preliminary parts of the study. So that's all my concern.
Well, I can assure you, there's no duplication of effort.
No, I don't. I'm not
Yeah.
getting at that. No, it's just making sure that we've factored that into it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments from the committee? Questions? Okay, so why don't we move on to 2019 LEC recommendations, staff response. Patrick?
Sorry, Rob, this document was just a summary of all the 2019
Okay.
recommendations, and we just wanted to make sure that you guys were looped in to where those landed.
Okay, so
So Annette and Patrick created this report that we're just updating. It's sort of island-wide. Quick update on the status of the different requests.
So that was 11, wasn't it? Oh, that was all the reports that were done up as responses to some of the questions, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so out of all those meetings, there were a list of recommendations and requests. Some could be addressed. It went to council back to staff to come up with a work plan, and that's the progress report that was generated for the purpose of this year's meetings.
Okay. And that's fine. So I guess
I think we've talked.
Go ahead.
So I think the only thing on there that pertains to Bluewater that we haven't touched on is the water main replacement earlier this year at, on Windjammer.
Right. And that would be the only other update that was completed. The paving was completed. Great job, Patrick, on that one. Cleaned up that area and got us 87, 90 meters of the first steps of water main replacements. Thank you. So,
yeah,
great.
There's a fair bit more to come.
Yeah, I know. And from a community point of view, especially us that were behind the scenes, they managed it really well with vehicle access and that. So great job on the muni staff and the contractors for doing the job. So you want to please relay that to them, okay? Okay. So if there's no other questions from the committee, we can move forward with the recommendation that the Bluewater Park Water System Local Advisory Committee receives the Water System LEC recommendation status report dated November 6, 2020 for information. Do I have a seconder?
Yep.
Jana? And all in favor?
Yep.
Carried. Okay. Water infrastructure documents. Patrick, you're still with us, providing more information. I think this is more of just the information follow-up, wasn't it? In regard to the drawings, what the Bluewater, King Edward Bay drawings, Bluewater distribution system, Bluewater Park, King Edward Bay main connections. So this is just one of the takeaways, right?
Yeah, this was a request for us to provide the drawings that we have. So we've made that available. There's a lot of question marks around discrepancies between what's shown on the drawings and what's actually in the ground that I alluded to earlier. We're currently investigating. It appears that there's a number of quite a few properties that are still connected to an old 2-inch water line that runs parallel to the 6-inch water line along Windjammer and Captain's Way. And so we're putting a big push into confirming what our asset inventory is. You know, how old is it? When is it going to need to be replaced? And what are we going to expect it to be needing for asset replacements? And we have an item in the proposed capital budget that's focused on that as well, which is it's also related to the water system improvement work that's ongoing.
So this
So
is,
that information we've provided, and I would, if there's questions about it, we can talk about it. I would just caution that it's we're working on developing a much better water system map than what we currently have.
right. And I guess the caveat to that would be, we know that all the lines, they're anywhere from 40 to 50 years old already. The vast majority of them, and studying to find out the exactly same information is I think throwing away some money that could be put toward starting the program of replacing sections of lines. So that would be probably a recommendation, or just a statement of area to focus on. Yeah, and as for the information that was supplied, it's good. I can get you a different PDF of the blue water system instead of the photo taken one. So I'll follow up with you on that, okay?
Okay.
Okay, any questions from the committee on any of those items that were distributed out in the agenda?
Nope.
Okay, let's move on to finance. How are we doing on time, staff? Excellent, good. Finance, Bluewater Park Water System 5-year financial plan 2021 to 2025. Hand it over to you, Raj.
Thanks, Rob. So I'm going to talk about the financial budget, the operating budget and the capital budget for 2020, the proposed budgets for 2020. So the objective of the finance conversation here is to explain the cost pressures for 2021 and to provide the local area committee with information proposed to be included in the 5-year financial plan for the operating and capital budgets, and for the LAC to make a recommendation to council. So the next slide here, you guys are seeing my slides, by the way, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So the next slide here is, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the water systems. So generally speaking, the total expenditures of each water system must be recovered through revenues generated in that water system. And the expenditure provisions within the water systems are comprised of administrative costs that are allocated and direct costs of operating the system. The administrative costs that are allocated included some administrative salaries and benefits that reflect effort spent on the water systems, a portion of the municipal liability insurance, audit fees, IT support costs, municipal, a portion of the municipal hall rent, and some office and supplies and postage costs. And the way these are allocated is a percentage of costs are allocated to the water system or to the collective water systems, and then they're prorated to each individual water system based on the number of connections relative to total connections. In terms of direct costs, there are operating wages of the public works employees who work directly in the water systems. And then supplies and services costs within the system, contract services obtained that are specific to each water system, and property insurance based on the insurable value of assets within the water systems, maintenance and infrastructure of equipment, and utility costs of running the equipment and PRV stations, etc. So generally speaking, the pressures for 2021, before going into the pressures, just a little bit of information here on the number of connections. There are actually 147 connected properties and 6 unconnected properties in the Bluewater Park system. And cost pressures identified in the 2021 budget are in the salaries and benefits area. So there'll be an additional $4,900 in salaries and benefit costs. And essentially, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the contribution to capital reserves, but there is a pressure in the sense that the capital reserve balances and the contribution are light in comparison to the infrastructure replacement and renewal needs of the system itself. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. So in order to address these cost pressures, we're proposing a 20% increase in collection of revenues from the Bluewater systems or in rates for 2021, and 15% provision is included in the outer years. almost all of that is going to increase the contribution to the capital reserve. So with that being the case, the current fixed rate for water is $800 per connected parcel. And I believe the increase would increase that rate to
$960.
$60.
So this past year was a 20%, so you're looking for another 20% this year.
We're looking for 20% in 2021. That's correct, across all water systems, or most water systems rather. So yeah, and as I mentioned, this is a 5-year financial plan, which shows 2020 budget, 2021, and then the outer 4 years. Essentially, an inflationary provision has been used to increase expenditures in the outer years in the neighborhood of 2%, a little bit less than 2% actually. And as you can see, the increase in revenue goes to increase the contribution to the reserve. And I'll talk a little bit more about the contribution to the reserve in the next slide, which is to do with capital infrastructure. But before I move on to that, are there any questions on the operating budget?
I've got a couple in looking at comparing to 2018 under expenses, salary and benefits. We've got 57,797, which is
The actual, yeah.
Yes, I think that was an increase of over 12,000 higher from 2018. Does this
Sorry.
encompass some of the extra time and effort and such put into the crisis last year? Is that where that difference is coming up?
I'd have to take a look at the comparison between 2018 and 19, because typically the way the direct costs are charged for the guys who work in public works is their salary costs are charged to the water system and then allocated out based on the number of connections. So they're not charging their time directly to Bluewater and directly to King Edward Bay. They again charge it to the system, and then we allocate their individual costs out based on that. So there should not have been extra costs charged in connection with work. If they spent extra time, they shouldn't have showed up in the actuals between 2018 and 19. So I'd have to take a look at that. I don't have 18 on the screen, Rob.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, there seems to be a renegade 12,000 that's popped up there in 2019, yet we're back down for the 2020 approved budget, back down to the more appropriate levels again. Or
I mean, it may have been,
Raj,
it may have been that they made a direct charge, but I'd have to take a look.
Okay.
Say better, sorry.
Raj, if there's capital work going on one of the water systems, my understanding is that they would be charging that to that particular system.
So in the issue of capital works, they would. We're just talking about the operating budget here.
Right.
I know, but there was, if going to fix a water main leak falls in the category of something that would be charged directly to the system. So that may explain what Rob is talking about.
So if we could follow up, Raj, just get a clarification on that, it'd be much appreciated.
Yeah, we'll have a look at that.
Okay.
So yeah, okay.
And the future, these studies we've been talking about, and the shares of those study costs being charged to Bluewater, where do they appear?
They'll show up in the next slide, which is the project.
Okay, they're not in the
Budget?
operating. Okay.
Yeah, this is operating. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Okay,
And
so
then-
if there's,
Go ahead, Raj.
oh, go ahead, Rob. Sorry, I was just.
No, it's just,
next slide if
are
there
we
are no
done
more
with that
questions.
point? Are we done with that point, or I can
Yeah.
ask another question?
If it's pertaining to operating, go ahead, and then
Okay. The next line down would be the supply and services. We got an actual of 43,891, which is running about 17K higher than 2018. For the 2018 actual to 2019 actual, is that the point that we had brought up previously, where the purchase of water is embedded in that supply and services line item?
that's correct.
Right. And you were going to follow up with a separate slide to show the community of the breakdown of purchasing of water, correct?
I don't have that for this presentation, but I didn't realize that was a request for this presentation. I mean, I can break that out for future
yeah, that was, I believe that
purchases are reported on a separate line.
Yeah, that was brought up previous, I believe, even in the September meeting. So that's fine, but that's the explanation. Probably the 17,000 is factored into that increase under supply and services.
I believe the 2019 cost was much higher, Rob. It was more in the neighborhood of $27,000.
Right.
So 27 of that 43 would have been for water purchases from King Edward Bay.
Correct. Okay. And then moving down to the
Rob, it's Allison.
Yes,
the the other side of the coin, the revenue from the recovery is shown on the King Edward Bay financial statements if you want to go and look at. Yeah.
Okay.
I did break it out in their statements. I just haven't broken the purchase out in yours.
Okay.
I can forward that to you guys. Right?
Yeah, because that I believe was a slide that I had saw. So we had brought that forward in September to so that the residents can see what kind of dollars that we're spending on buying supplemental water. So I think that's
I'll send it to you.
for the community to see.
So what I can tell you that looking at your slide, essentially in 2021, I believe the provision for purchasing water from King Edward Bay include of the 31, 16,000 pertains to purchasing water. And
17,000 for 2021, Raj, because I'm looking at the spreadsheet.
Okay, sorry, I was off by 1,000. 17 for 2021, and it goes up by $1,000 a year.
19,000. So it's running between 17 and 20,000.
Okay. And then the last item at the bottom, transfer to surplus and reserves. So no transfer happened in 2019. Correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. Because of all the
issues in that year, there was, we in fact ended up drawing down from the surplus to fund the deficit.
Right. Okay, thanks. Any other questions from the committee on the operating budget?
No.
Good.
Okay. So the next slide here is the capital budget slide for 2021 to 2025. I'm going to speak to the larger part of the slides here, and then I'll let Patrick talk about the individual projects or address any questions you may have about individual projects. As Patrick had mentioned earlier, all of these amounts here are provisions that are put in the budget. So if we don't continue with the work, we won't we won't take the money out of the reserve, or it'll be returned back to the reserve. But what is worth noting on the larger picture is over the next 5 years, there's approximately $2.3 million of works that have been identified, most of them being renewal and replacement needs for the Bluewater Park system. And the reserve only has $167,800 as the opening estimated value for 2021 to address all of those needs. So for the purposes of the financial plan, those larger placeholders right now in the years 2022 to 2025, I'm going to use the assumption of borrowing in order to be able to include them in the financial plan. I think it's important to identify them in here so that people understand the pressures facing the system. Otherwise, you'll lose sight of them. I mean, in past years, when I first arrived here, I believe the budgets used to contain a $10,000 provision for in case things needed to be repaired. And then in the outer years, we didn't have a projection like this that was projecting the replacement costs. So those placeholders are important to have in there. And essentially this shows, I'd also included in the narrative underneath the capital budget that, Robert, you had mentioned that as well, that the system is 40 to 50 years old. So it's probably beyond half of its useful life. So if we had been putting an appropriate amount of money aside into the capital reserves, that capital reserve balance should be in the 1.8 to $2 million range, as opposed to the 167,000 that's there. So just highlights the infrastructure funding gap or deficit to address needs of the system going forward.
Kind of saving for retirement comparison, eh?
So to speak. So that's kind of everything that I have to say. And I mean, I'll open up the mic or the floor to questions on the specific projects. If you have questions, or if Patrick wants to walk you through the individual requests, we can do that.
Maybe you can quickly walk us through, Patrick, and then committee members can add in any comments or questions, okay?
Okay. So the water system improvements we've talked about, that's essentially looking at phase 1 and 2, the design, the concept analysis and design phase of that project, whatever that might entail. The next, essentially a placeholder, probably should say water system improvements, because it may not just be distribution main upgrades. There may be wells as well as storage improvements, treated water storage improvements, or other improvements.
You're cutting out on us, Patrick.
We're losing his picture too.
The resident was
turned it
put
off.
forward in the previous year's budget that we, can you hear me?
It's
You're
very
cutting out.
hit and miss.
Hello?
It's hit and miss. Where are you?
I'm actually, I have an appointment I have to get to, so I'm getting onto the ferry.
Oh, that's the problem then.
But usually this works.
Depending where you are on the ferry, sometimes it doesn't work too well.
Go up to the top deck.
Right. Well, yeah, well, I will as soon as I can. Okay. So if you can hear me,
That's better.
metering was a previous year's item, and the intent there is to look at ultimately replacing all of our manually read meters with meters that can be read remotely, which would reduce on operation costs and staff time to read the meters, as well as provide better information to be able to track leakage in the system and that sort of thing. So really next year was looking at the business case and some design questions around that with the implementation and subsequent year.
What's the relationship between the
water master plan was again something that was put forward last year.
We're losing you, Patrick.
I think in the absence of Patrick, I think he was down at the enhancement GIS database line.
Right.
This is essentially improved data on the condition of our assets and the risk of failure. So it's improved. It's an asset management exercise and getting that information into the GIS system so we can prioritize how to basically address issues within the water system. And the update FlowWorks information database, again, actually it's a shared initiative across all water systems, and the cost has been allocated based on the number of connections, prorated based on the total number of connections, and it's to get better metering information and flow information, I believe, on water. I mean,
and a lot of this, Raj, was presented in the February financial joint committee meeting.
So that's correct.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just curious about the numbers in the residential water meter upgrades line. There's 20,000 K or 20K in 2021 and 400K in 2022. Can you explain what those numbers relate to?
Again, we're 2021 is a business case for whether we should do the water metering. So the total cost is estimated to be about $20,000, and it's been allocated across all water systems across the island. And right now the placeholder, I mean, that could be higher. It could, once we have the business case, then we'll decide whether we should move ahead with that. And the whole idea here is to have electronically read water meters installed at all properties. Currently, a staff member goes and reads all the meters in order for the billing to take place. So it would remove the need to have meters manually read, and it would also allow the opportunity to detect water leaks a lot quicker if there happened to be a water leak due to unusual consumption being measured on a regular basis.
So the 400K estimate for 2022 is an island-wide number, is it?
It's an island-wide number, and it's a placeholder.
Okay, okay.
So
it's
really
a bit confusing to show it in our capital budget. That's all I'm asking.
Well, the reason I've shown it this way is so that you can see the total cost is included in the description. And then in the column that shows the actual cost, you see what's being charged to your system. That way you see both the total cost of the study and the portion that's being allocated to Bluewater Park.
Okay.
And the other saving too is that with the remote read meters, my understanding from talking to the people at the UBCM trade show, those numbers will automatically be transferred into the billing system. So no manual entry or anything like that. So that it'll save a lot of staff time.
No doubt.
Well, can you hear me?
That's better.
Yes.
Okay, good. I just wanted to add that it may be that we end up having other priorities. And when we look at the business case and what's involved in implementing this island-wide, it may have to be phased over more years than what's shown here.
Okay.
The water master plan hasn't really been highly supported by the LACs. It was put forward last year as a plan to look at water supply, asset management, governance, rate structures, all sorts of aspects relating to water supply on the island. We think there's still value in looking at a lot of these things. We've put it in as a placeholder to be phased over multiple years to deal with master planning related issues. So some of the things mentioned earlier, like looking at the governance of the water systems and the rate structures, and potentially considering the surface water source that was previously used in the Bluewater system. And those type of things might fall under that that master planning item.
And I think the resistance that you're getting from the water, from the LACs, is if this is an island-wide initiative, I think the municipality needs to grow up and actually do its own work for the municipality rather than trying to spread it around in little buckets all over the place. It makes really no sense from the overall island management point of view.
And this was echoed in the February.
Yeah, we've said it a few times now, I think.
Yeah,
but it keeps coming back,
Yeah, where 1,200 municipal connected connections are having to pay for all 2,400 various water supply and connection for this study, which is an island-wide study. So the idea is supported, but the way that it's being funded is of concern.
I mean, if you were,
Well, I guess what it's become is not, it's less of a island-wide study that's sort of embarked on in one go. Now it's really a placeholder for planning related work that pertains to each of the individual water systems.
But Patrick, that would cycle back up to your very first line of 120,000 expected from the Bluewater system for financing those pretty much same improvements that you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if this was a Bowen Island transportation plan, you wouldn't be passing it around to the different areas. You'd be doing it centrally, and
well, transportation's a little different.
Well, not really. We all need water and we all need transportation. I don't really see what the difference is.
Well, the difference is that the utilities are funded. There is an argument to be made, and I think it's reasonable that there's a municipal portion of the cost for an island-wide study. The difference with roads and water systems is that the water system utilities are funded by user rates, and we don't have that system in place for roads. All roads, all municipal roads are an island-wide cost, and that's just how it's been set up. But having said that, there is a municipal interest in having an island-wide understanding of our water supply and all the issues around providing the basic level of water service to everybody on the island, and that includes people on municipal systems and people who aren't on municipal systems. So we've gotten a number of comments about this item from other LACs. Raj and I are going to have to look at how we frame this work and also take another look at the financing for it.
Yeah, I would put it to you that it should be more than just an interest. It's an obligation for the municipality to provide water. It's not an interest, it's an obligation. And if you want to do a master plan, then do a master plan. It's your obligation.
Your points are well taken, that there are components or beneficiaries outside of the water system, and that the allocation of costs should go beyond the water system and be shared by the general fund. And that's something, I mean, that's not reflected in this allocation, but that was I realize that was a recommendation in the past, and that point is well taken and well made. And so as Patrick said, we'll be looking at that and looking to reflect that in the allocation perhaps.
Thank you.
And you've got that as a minute line item, Steph, correct? Of what we talked about here. You're on mute.
Sorry, that the action is to look into how.
Or just more just a statement of Bluewater's concern in regard to how.
Yeah, I said that the water master plan is supported in theory, but the financing is a concern.
Yeah.
1,200 people paying for 24 people's water, island wide.
Okay. Sounds good.
So the last slide I have here is just general interest. When I've got here that the estimated replacement value of the Bluewater Park system is 3.4 million. I've just provided a slide of the approximate breakdown. And so essentially of the 3.4 million, 2.1 million is in the water mains and service connection. And the other large components here, the PRV station with $612,000 estimated replacement value, and the wells with the $288,000 replacement value. And smaller components being the SCADA packs and chlorination shed station of replacement value of 80K. These are estimated and extended out. They were extended out in 2019 rather, not 9. In 2019, and as we get better data, this information will be improved through the asset management exercise. The information will be supplemented with risk and condition assessments.
Okay. Anything else, Raj?
That's everything on the finance side.
Okay.
I'll stop sharing my screen. Thanks.
Committee members, comments? Okay. So I guess the recommendation is that the Bluewater Park Water System Local Advisory Committee recommend that council direct staff to include the draft Bluewater.
Rob, do you want me to put it on the screen? And then if there's any comments you want to include in it, can I share my screen for a sec?
Sure.
Can you see that?
There it is.
Yeah.
So that if you wanted to provide comments on operating or capital to be in the resolution to council, that's what the other committees have been doing. Or if you don't, if you're perfectly thrilled with how things are, just
We're
leave
never,
all that out.
we're never thrilled when it's going to cost us more money, but
Sorry, let me rephrase. Just that like the conversation isn't going to be what's going to be impacting council's
right.
influence and direction for these decisions. So if there's something specific, you would want to include it in here. Or not.
And I think we already talked about the master plan, made points about that. And the first line item, 120,000. It is what it is. We got to start rolling down that road as a plan. It's for us moving forward. So I'm in support of this. Other committee members as well. So I guess ask for a second.
So just a second. So you don't want to make any specific comments about anything being deleted from the budget as it's presented by Raj right now? Because if you do, it has to be in here now.
Right.
Do you see what I wrote about?
Who is that? Go ahead.
They're wanting the costs relating to the master plan to be reviewed.
Right.
The main comment.
So I said that the
That would
water
be
master
great,
plan
yeah.
financing financing strategy be reviewed.
The water master plan funding strategy
Mm-hmm.
be reconsidered.
As a private water system holder, I'm quite happy to leave it the way it is because we're not going to benefit from any study.
That was me yesterday on the parcel tax. Water plan funding strategy be reconsidered. Good.
And if you want to be more specific so that they understand, you can say be reconsidered to include funding from the general fund.
There we go.
Fund. Municipal fund.
No, it's from the general fund. From the
Capital letters.
general fund, you can say if you wanted to.
Sorry, what was the word before general? Just there.
Municipal stuff.
Thank you.
For the Bowen General Fund. Yeah.
So if we agree to this recommendation or we make this recommendation, what I think we're doing is, just to be clear, we're agreeing with the 2021 capital budget. Am I right? And then
Yes.
the years going forward are simply, as we've seen, are really placeholders at this point.
That's correct.
Yes.
And what about the fund increases year over year? Are they directional, or are we agreeing to?
So the outer years are directional. You would be agreeing to the 2020.
Okay, which was the
2021, sorry.
20% increase. Yeah.
So the 49,300 to go to the reserve fund, is that what you're referring to, Jerry or Mike?
I was actually referring to the rate increases, which were indicated looking out 5 years, which I think is great. We should look out that far, but I was just wanting to be clear that the rates we're actually committing or we're recommending the 2021 rate increase, right?
Yeah.
Which is the 20%.
20%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, the 5-year financial plan comes back every year. So it'll be revisited at the same time next year for the subsequent year and outlying years as well.
Yep.
I made a note of that. I think it's worth having that as part of your documentation for the community to see. Sometimes community members are less informed as LAC members.
Right.
And feel like they're being maybe burned. And then LAC members say, we really need to build up our capital reserve fund. We've thought this through. We think it's a good idea to raise the rate.
Yeah,
Do you
although
like that?
we all know
Peter?
that no amount of rate increases are going to solve our capital problem, right?
Right.
Uh,
So when you
That's
take
good.
$960 divided by 12, that's $80 a month, which is some it could be unreasonable, but it definitely is on par with a lot of communities for other communities for water supply costs too. So
mhm.
unfortunately, my opinion is that we've been underfunded or saving for the future for a very long time, but we've got to catch up now.
So do you want me to take this note out or leave it in?
Supported in order to increase the contribution of the capital reserves.
Maybe take out strongly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Bob, that $80 a month is 1 penny per imperial gallon.
okay.
I might just recommend that be a more general recommendation that the operating budget as presented is supported.
Well, that's what's up
Oh,
above.
that's already in it. I'll just take
Okay, sorry.
it's already up here. So
Right.
right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay.
That's fine.
I don't want to confuse things. I just want to make sure you guys realize that this is the spot where all the magic happens.
One other question.
There's you've got a typo there in the under operating budget, Steph. The O rate.
Oh,
Well,
right.
because we might be taking it out.
That's because I messed you up.
No,
We started to type something else. Okay.
okay, just delete operate.
Right.
There
And
you
you're referencing December 3 up above.
Oh, yeah.
Today's date.
Today's the 8th.
Yeah.
Half a snowman.
Copy and paste from King Edward Bay, right?
Oh no. Busted.
We do it all.
We had two
There's got to be
meetings.
something more you want to say.
Yeah, you had two that day. I saw you on YouTube. I watched
Oh
it.
geez.
Jerry and I watched it.
Well, that was I had 3 meetings that day.
Wow.
I was glued to this chair.
Okay.
Is everything else in capital is good?
Take your brackets out of with the following comments.
Thank you.
And I guess semicolon behind reserves to correct it. Committee members, any further comments?
No.
No, appreciate that we've included those comments on the edits there. Thank you.
Okay. So if all in agreement, do we have a seconder for this?
Yep, sure.
Okay. Jerry or Mike or Jana? All in favor?
Yep.
Carried.
Okay, now we're getting a little bit behind timing wise, but you still think you're doing great.
Okay. So that's finance. So now we get to move into the nuts and bolts of things. How's that? Correspondence and actions. So
Those are just there's one is just that compiled from the info meetings this year.
Yeah.
Requested actions. Committees can't direct staff, but those just to keep a record of what the requests have been. And then your email, Rob, and then there was an email from Lorraine McGregor that was going to be addressed verbally.
Okay. So
it's 6.1 and 6.2 we're dealing with.
6.1 and 6.2.
Well, and maybe 6.8.
Bluewater Committee questions, November 9th.
So ideally, most of these have been addressed during this meeting.
Okay, there is some outstanding ones. So if we can maybe cycle down to the November 9th questions that was sent by the committee, correct?
Yes. Do you want to screen share, or do you have another screen? Do you want me to screen share?
You can screen share.
Okay.
And I'm not going to read through all these, but I'm presuming that Patrick, Raj, you've gone through to answer some questions along the way. Have you prepared?
So there's your first one.
Okay. So first item was more of just an information placeholder for a property sale that's coming, that's hit the market. So that was just an FYI to the municipality. Keeping in mind that the current Mutiny Lane well field is not in the best of shape that we know of right now, and I'm doubting that the municipality is going to want to be punching any more holes in that area in the near future. So this was just more of a placeholder.
Rob, from an ongoing perspective, if there is proposed development there, there's a potential source of funds for having them drill the well.
Correct. So that's why it was just bringing to your attention. Okay.
Sorry, I'm just
I
going
think there's also a
notes on a
concern
different
that drilling a
screen.
well in that area may not be the right solution.
Sorry.
That shouldn't be the knee-jerk reaction that we just, let's drill a well, because we know the problems we've got.
But
And
he can still pay for it even if it's not in that area.
Yeah.
Because it'd be a rezoning.
And if they do decide to develop, subdivide, then that is putting more pressure on the aquifer system on the west side too for additional connections. So it's a bigger thing to look at here. That better to have us start thinking of a strategy now for the potential for the future, right?
Rob, just a point of clarification here. It's Shauna here. The 2018 Bluewater Park minutes reflect a response from the municipality that any future development would be something along the lines of it would be under their consideration to implement any sort of water improvements. I would hesitate anyone to specify the mechanism of improvement as opposed to focusing in on an objective.
Okay. Thank you.
We've included that parcel in our development or future growth scenarios for the west side. At this point, that's the main consideration, to make sure that it's on the radar screen, and we're accounting for some potential growth there.
Okay. Point number 2. I believe this has all been taken care of earlier on your slide, Raj. The 2019-2020 financial statement forecast.
Yeah, and I've noted that the committee would like to see the purchase of Bluewater Park separated out. My apologies, that wasn't done for this meeting, but I will do that for subsequent reporting.
Okay. And then point number 4, the breakdown of the 94,000 spent on the drilling of the 2 wells up in Mutiny Wellfield.
So if I can just share my screen for a sec, I've summarized the $94,000, and you can see the breakdown. Bear with me for just a quick sec.
Can you send us that as well, Raj?
Right now, I've just got it in a snipping.
I mean, after the meeting, so I can include it
Yeah.
in the revised agenda.
So essentially, the 94,000 can be broken down into 3 main components. 48,306 of that is engineering services for the Bluewater well and system assessments. 42,554 in costs related directly to the well construction, and $380 of the costs pertain to water trucking or trucking of water to the KEB tank.
Sorry, are you showing a breakdown of costs?
Are you
No, we're
seeing?
getting a Zoom
I'm
invite.
looking at an email from me and Rob's email.
Oh, maybe even, hold on. Just a sec. I thought the share screen worked. Maybe it didn't work.
We are sharing your device, but it's not I think the screen you want.
Okay. What are you seeing on your screen? Sorry.
It's the attachment of Rob's email and.
Oh, here you go. How about now?
There we go.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry,
There
I
we
just
go.
moved it onto the wrong screen. So these are the costs that I just went over. My apologies about the earlier glitch. But engineering services for Bluewater well system assessment were $48,306. The well construction costs were $42,554, and water trucked to the KEB tank amounted to $33.80, and that all totaled up to $94,000 that for the breakdown of.
Okay, so the 48,000 was outside engineering services,
That's correct.
right?
Okay, and I'll unshare my screen.
Yeah, I think just to add in, I think the engineering services Bluewater well and system assessment would have been the work that I undertook with the EXP. And then the tank services as the supply during the crises, the two rounds of water delivery to the tank. And then the well drilling would have been the Bob Robinson efforts.
Oh, so, okay. This was where it gets confusing because that 75,000 that was approved was only for the well drilling from the 2018 LAC meetings. So you've lumped everything in together onto that 75,000, which then surpassed up into the 94,000 for the crises as well. But is there other funding that was coming out of different budgets for getting us through the crises in 2019 too?
So when you talk, are you talking about the repairs at Spyglass Road? Or
No,
okay, just about the this.
Because there was other items that came out of the capital reserve fund, correct?
My understanding is that these are the total costs. The 48,000 represented engineering costs related to that.
Okay.
To that crisis.
Okay.
Or
Yeah, because you're not.
Whatnot.
Yeah, you're not doing. I'd have to go back into my the past presentations on the capital reserve funds from the previous ones.
But yes, this 94,000 came out of that budget of that $75,000 budget for the well.
That's the clarification. So this
yeah.
is
So we had a $75,000 budget, but $94,000 in spending.
So in reality, to drill those two wells was $43,000.
Exactly.
Which seems more reasonable to drill two wells.
Yeah.
And then the additional was all the consulting fees, the crises, and the truck in the water. That makes more sense.
That's correct.
Okay, that wasn't a clear picture to us before.
Okay.
Okay.
My apologies on that. Okay.
So that does help explain a lot of things here in regard to how we spent $94,000 worth of capital reserve fee funding last year. Okay. Anybody else have any questions, committee members, on that part? Okay. Can you share the screen again, Steph?
We down to question 6 now?
Yeah.
I think Patrick and Glenn have probably answered that one in their
So go ahead. Item 6 is more regard to the Bluewater steel tank because it only fills to about 40% capacity right now. So we're leaving 50,000 liters of storage on the table right now. And I know that there's been discussions about this, but really what we're interested in is what is being looked at to gain that volume back again for storage capacity.
Well, there has been a check valve installed on the King Edward Bay tank as part of the water works upgrades that were done for with the Arbutus Ridge Phase 2 development. That should prevent backflow into the tank. We're also, as I mentioned earlier, just trying to figure out what is the actual configuration of the water lines and the valves, and this is in our effort to detect some leaks that we're aware of.
Okay.
We're also going to be getting more clarity on what is happening there. We don't have a particular solution at this point to making sure that the Bluewater reservoir can fill up. I mean, that may be part of the water system improvements that are recommended when we come back early in 2021 to discuss our solutions and how we move forward with those.
Okay. Yeah, we just don't want to.
Maybe that we're. Sorry.
No, I'm just saying we just don't want this dropping off the table. Just to make sure that the whole system is being looked at, including that deficiency item that's been like that for I guess 10 years now. Okay.
Yeah, that's part of the picture that we're investigating, and will be part of the considerations for what's the best way to meet the water system's needs.
But you're saying with a check valve installed right now, it may not have made any difference. So we don't want to get into the details about that, as this is more of a strategic discussion anyways. But yeah, we can follow up offline just to fill me in on the details if you want. So
Okay.
7, I think we've answered that already in regard to the RFP award, urban system schedule. You stated February. The urban system scope of work. Jerry, you brought this one forward.
Yeah, it comes back to my belief that from the 35,000 foot view, storage over time is going to become a much more serious issue within our water system island-wide. I participated in the webinar that Islands Trust funded or supported or hosted several weeks ago, and they've done extensive research on the Islands Trust area of projected annual rainfall over the next 50 years. And they state that actually our annual rainfall is going to increase, which is good news. But the increase is going to be between November and March. And the summers are going to be hotter, longer, and drier. So that means to me, the bottom line, and this again is kind of a worldview, it's either desal or mega storage. And, you know, I'm talking out at least 5 or 10 years probably, but there are major infrastructure requirements, I think, for this, the equivalent of what I mentioned earlier, this battery that we need, this stored energy or stored resource facility. So that was my point there, that I'm hoping that we'll see something again. I think it's reasonable for us to wait and see what comes out in February and then pursue it as appropriate at that time. But I do believe that if we look at long-term climate change science, we're going to find that our problem is going to exacerbate. So, you know, that's a warning for us, and there's obviously going to be substantial investment required. Just while we're talking on the same point of water storage, I'd like to just jump down and include it in my comment now. I believe that as an island-wide initiative, the municipality should give serious consideration to modifying building bylaws so that all new residential construction includes a mandatory water storage system, or as islands just call it, rainwater harvesting. And that means at the very least a tank with a runoff from a water collecting roof, or in some cases, as in my case, in fact, I've got a stream running through my property which I can tap into and collect 5,000 gallons without doing too much at all, in addition to the collection I already have off my roof. I think this combination of individual citizens' efforts and a community-wide effort is going to be as required as in combination long term.
Jerry, I want to pipe in because you speak to some topics that are dear to my heart as well, and I assure you that climate change is being considered in our study. I live it every day in the work that I do. I actually sit on the climate change advisory group for our professional association of engineers in BC. There really isn't a project that I do that doesn't incorporate it, and certainly are incorporated into the work that we're doing here on Bowen Island. On a separate note, we've been looking at Grafton Lake, the Cove Bay system, and Eagle Cliff, where we actually did some comprehensive analysis stretching out to year 2100 using climate data to understand how Grafton Lake is expected to change both due to community growth and climate change. And we're certainly giving consideration with respect to your aquifers of how recharge may change over that time, and incorporating community growth as well. So definitely is being included. So hopefully that comforts you.
Excellent, thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Can I add something from a council perspective on Jerry's comments?
Yeah.
Anytime there's a rezoning, we try and include rainwater harvesting and pervious surfaces and all that stuff into the rezoning. I don't think we can mandate somebody who's already got an already created lot and comes for a building permit that they have to put in rainwater harvesting, because it's not the provincial building.
Yeah.
The
building
code is provincial.
The future, yeah.
Yeah, but certainly there's lots of lobbying going on, I believe, to have that type of thing put into the provincial building bylaws.
Yeah.
So can I clarify a question? Can I ask a question, please?
Yep.
Clarify, are you saying that you cannot mandate existing properties to?
Correct.
Is that a provincial regulation, a federal regulation, what?
When you go for a building permit, you have to apply to, and it's under the provincial building code. When we've got rezoning, we can put in all the conditions we want.
Right. So is there no mechanism? Is there no mechanism for requiring? We're creating the problem. Us who are homeowners in these areas, we're creating the problem by using up all this potable water. Yeah. Is there no way that we can be part of the solution? That it be mandated we be part of the solution?
Just put them in, but
Allison, we could revise the building bylaw to include those types of requirements.
Well, Patrick,
nothing.
I'm not sure that we can put in stricter requirements than the province has.
Yes, you can.
Okay, did they change that?
Right.
It's been like that for ages.
Well, that was the case for Evergreen. I live in Evergreen, and essentially it was a condition of
that was rezoning.
That's a new development.
That's true. That was rezoning. Yeah.
But as
no, there's
well, I'm just going to say, Patrick, City of Vancouver has their own building code, fire code, everything else. So they're one step even more stricter.
They're under the Vancouver has their own charter, so they can do all sorts of things that the rest of us can't do.
So,
no, anyways, there's lots of municipalities that exceed provincial requirements in their own bylaws.
But isn't that in their water
Anyway,
bylaws, not their building bylaws? Anyhow, we'll
Building
take that.
bylaws.
Yeah, it's something that we just wanted to point out that
Yeah,
it's
no, I'm
it's
not
not just
disagreeing
about
with-
pulling water out of the ground and sending it to us. There's a number of side initiatives we want to promote here too, and we want to promote that even within our own community as LAC members too. So
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I think one of the other points was funding through various means. Of course, you're looking at user fees, potential loans, Raj, you brought up. And then there's the potential for grants, similar to what Cove Bay, I think, received. And that could be something on a much larger project venture that's encompassing a larger aspect of the communities. So we just wanted to reinforce those. Item 9, I think it was, yes. So you are looking at a lot of different avenues for that, correct, Raj?
We do look for grant funding where it's available, but so I mean, Patrick generally is doing that in the infrastructure area. However, I mean, grant funding is limited. When you get grant funding for certain projects, it limits what you can get down the road for other projects as well. So it would be, grant funding would be seeked out on a priority basis. Essentially, and on probability of success of receiving it as well.
And of course, for the betterment of the whole island community too,
Yeah.
as an
Yeah.
application.
But we definitely do search out any opportunities for available grant funding for projects.
Yeah, like we wouldn't expect grants to fix existing infrastructure in Bluewater. That's just not going to cut it.
Yeah.
But if there's a larger an initiative for the whole west side, that could be a potential for that.
Potentially.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, and then yep. Go ahead, Patrick.
I was just going to say, I mean, as soon as we have a project definition, we'll be looking for any possible fits with available grants. You need to have a project to submit,
right?
As opposed to, well, we have some problems that we'll figure out once we get some money. So.
And of course, any entertaining of loans, additional funding in that, of course, will be coming back through the LAC and the community for consultations.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Final point before we get into Lorraine's, Alfred has brought up some comments that he's made in past meetings as well about the structure for water billing. And I noticed that you've made some changes to the web page for Bluewater in regard to water system charge fee changes coming in the future, similar to Cove Bay and Tunstall. I've noticed that. So that's an initiative that you're looking at for changes potentially for Bluewater.
Sorry, I haven't gone to our web page lately to take a look, so I'd have to.
Yeah, it's linking over to Tunstall Bay just to maybe mirror what changes you made over to Tunstall Bay. So that's changing kind of the structure for billing, unit rate billing, etc., starting actually from 1 gallon up. But also looking at the accuracy and how the billing is between us and even purchasing water from the King Edward Bay system as well too. So, and I believe that comment was vigorously talked about over in the King Edward Bay meeting that you had on December 3rd, as well as the accuracy, as well as the fairness of the billing between the two systems too.
So we are, in terms of billing, we are trying to have consistent billing on a per meter and on the excess cost between the three west side water systems, being King Edward Bay, Bluewater Park, and Bowen Bay. And then Tunstall Bay, I believe, Annette can correct me if I'm wrong, but they have a slightly different billing structure than those three. So the billing practice is uniform for those three systems. And what was, sorry, there was another point that you had raised as well.
Oh, just the rates for unit rates for billing for the King Edward rate.
So I have not taken a look at the unit rates because of the West Side study and the Water Master study that's underway. So I believe we would hold off on changing the rate structure, which is what Alfred had spoken to earlier. That right now with a flat, I mean, your water charge is primarily a fixed rate charge, and the variable rate does not generally kick in until a very large consumption. So actually, for Alfred's point was, high consumers of water are actually getting water for cheaper than somebody who is a low amount of water, and we are aware of that, and our billing structure, and we will keep that in mind as basically we proceed with the Water Master study. And we just don't want to change the billing structure in the interim and then go to some other billing structure, because it would just be too much change.
Okay, that makes sense.
So something we are aware of and will be taking into consideration in the longer run.
Great. Okay, and then I guess Lorraine McGregor had some comments that was sent into the municipality and the committee here a little while ago. Did you want to jump in, Lorraine? Are you still on?
Yeah, I'm here.
Want to make some comments in regard to this?
Thanks, Rob. I just wanted to create some context about why I'm asking about Eagle Cliff. You know, as we saw in the capital budget for Bluewater, you know, 2.4 million or 500,000 a year for 4 years. That's a lot of money. And I wanted to understand how different water systems are going to come up with a capital to make these changes. And so I'm asking, I did some research on the Eagle Cliff project to gain some understanding about how it might work for Bluewater. So please answer the question in terms of, you know, is this the model that we're going to also experience? And I noticed that 500,000 is set up as a placeholder, but it's over 4 years. Do we need to spend it all in 2022 to have a functioning water supply system? So that's my context for those first two questions, or three questions.
Well, first of all, we need to understand what the solution is. What is it that we need to do to ensure reliable supply of high quality water and meet fire protection needs for the Bluewater system and the rest of the West Side water system? Once we have a project defined, then we would absolutely, similarly to the approach for Eagle Cliff, look at any and all grant funding opportunities that we could apply for. And in the case of Eagle Cliff, there's also consideration for merging water systems and understanding the finances around that, and what the contributions from other users joining the water systems would be. At this point, we're not able to include anything more than a placeholder in the budgets because we haven't gotten through that phase of defining and determining what the best solution is for the system. I don't know if that answers your question.
A little bit, yeah, it answers a lot of it. But just how did that shortfall work out for Eagle Cliff residents when the grants didn't cover the whole cost?
Well, to be clear, we applied for a grant in October of this year, and it's a Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program grant. They don't necessarily provide their decisions on successful award or not very quickly, so we might not know until October of next year, or possibly earlier, late summer. We might know about it, but we don't know that we're getting that money, and that's a question we'll have to be reviewing with the Eagle Cliff LAC. Is you know, if we do we hold off on design work until we know about our grant funding, or do we proceed with some of those costs? If you don't have grant money, then what that leaves you with is essentially long-term borrowing or short-term borrowing. You've got to borrow the money for anything that exceeds the available reserves. So for most water systems, major projects would exceed available reserves. So that leaves you with grant funding if you can get it, or debt financing.
So if I can just add to that, the provision in the budget is based on grant funding. The budget is a plan. So the plan is we can spend that money if we're successful in the grant application. If we're not successful in the grant application, it doesn't mean we automatically go to borrowing. It means we revisit the strategy with borrowing being proposed as a second measure, and that would have to be approved by, there's a whole process around borrowing. So there would have to be a referendum or an elector approval of being willing to service that debt over the long term period. And so we would, once the borrowing is approved, we would address those works. We cannot begin on those works until we have a confirmed funding source to do those works.
Okay, so what you're saying is we could have a plan for doing the repairs for Bluewater Park, but then not have a source of funding and not know about when and how we'd see these repairs take place for a couple of years.
So currently I've made the assumption, I had mentioned that earlier in the presentation, you know how you have the $500,000 a year requirement. Right now, the assumption has been made that will be based on long-term borrowing, and that is a placeholder. And then we'll have to proceed further as we basically move further along in time.
Okay, could you comment on the municipality's ability to continue borrowing since we just borrowed and had the referendum for the community center? Is there room for additional borrowing?
There is significant, I don't have the number in front of me, but there is significant room for borrowing within the municipality's debt servicing limits and calculations.
Okay, good. Steph, could you scroll down? I kind of forget what the rest of my questions are. Borrowing capacity, yeah. Okay, and then what is happening with the Arbutus Ridge development? It went ahead and built roads and set up lots, and it doesn't have a source of water, or has it found another source of water that's not going to infringe on our source of water?
The Arbutus Ridge Phase 2, so essentially the first phase to the east of Windjammer, includes 9 lots, and it includes a new well that will be brought online for the and included as part of the King Edward Bay system. Depending on the preferred solutions that we come up with for Bluewater, that may end up being tied into the Bluewater system as well. They also were participating with us in the Aquifer study that looked at the overall aquifer and monitoring wells across all of the West Side water system.
So they're able to tap into the same aquifer and where it's more productive at the south end with their new well?
The well that they've installed is quite a bit more productive than any of the Bluewater wells, yes.
And Patrick, I guess to expand on that from the King Edward Bay meeting, that there's another potential private well that could be brought online as well. And to expand on this, Lorraine's questions about also the Arbutus Ridge development is being built, and the water system is expanded to be robust enough to provide additional support throughout the west side.
They are, to date, it's just been considering that the phase 2, the 9 lots I mentioned, they're just putting forward proposals for phase 3 and 4, which would be another, between those 2 phases, another 23 lots. Those subsequent phases, they're also proposing another reservoir higher up above the current King Edward Bay Reservoir. And we haven't seen the details of their application yet, but the concepts that they've provided would include additional reservoir storage in the subsequent phases. The private well you referred to is the adjacent property, Ian Stewart's property that he's got a subdivision application for. Those are all on private wells, not part of a municipal system, but he's approached me asking about interest in bringing one of those wells. Again, it's a more productive well than the Bluewater wells, bringing that well onto the municipal system. So that's an option that we'll be looking into as part of our concept analysis and design work.
Thanks, Patrick. I guess I'm a little bit, I don't know what to say or how to phrase the question, but all of these areas are tapping the same aquifer. They're finding good production, but because of our location, we're not able to access the good production. So they're going to have a reliable water source, and we're not, or we're going to get more reliable water if everybody decides to cooperate and share it. Could you put some highlights on that?
Well, I think that you're right that the best production is further south from the Bluewater well field, and it's likely that our most effective solution to meeting everybody's expected level of service in terms of water supply would be to rely on supply from what is currently other water systems. We're going to be investigating possible solutions that involve merging water systems. And we've already heard some concern and reluctance to go that route, and so that's why we have to involve all of the water systems in the design process of looking at what the options are and what makes the most sense. What makes the most sense for everybody.
Yeah. Okay. And to be clear, the municipality owns all these water systems. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So, ultimately, I mean, theoretically, council could decide to, dissolve LACs and make everything administered as one municipal system. There are municipal water systems. The LACs have an advisory capacity. We're very reluctant to take actions and implement solutions without the LACs being on board. And so that's our intention, is to have consensus agreement with whatever solutions are proposed.
Okay, and then I guess one last question, and I'll yield the floor. So given that we're probably just starting the planning phase this winter and spring rolls around and there won't be necessarily grant money available right away or borrowing capacity, that's going to take a while, we should expect another year of water shortages and possibly not enough water for fire suppression?
Not necessarily. I mean, there may be ways to optimize the production of the existing infrastructure, the existing wells we have in place. In fact, we did have a number of recommendations for improving the production from wells in all three systems. And we may be able to avoid a similar summer of water restrictions by optimizing our current supply. So I wouldn't say it's a foregone conclusion that we're going to face another summer of restrictions. It's possible, but it's also possible that we can avoid that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I guess
Before we move on to the next list, can I just confirm that everybody's satisfied with that? I don't have any outstanding actions from this document. Do I? Do I have one financial breakdown for number 4? Perhaps an action for Raj?
Was number 4.
yes.
Sorry, now I've just closed my screen.
Sorry, I closed that document. But
So did I, sorry, just here it is. Number 4 was the detailed breakdown by task of the 94K spent on drilling 2 dry wells.
we went over.
Yeah, we reviewed that.
So you're gonna send that? We're gonna send it, or?
I can send that to you if you want to include. Yeah, I'll send you that clip.
So other than that, there's nothing else in this list that's outstanding?
Nope.
Good news. Thank you.
So what's left, Steph?
So there were just the actions from the info meeting. But I think if you're satisfied, it's your call at this point.
Yes, so the info meeting, page 68.
That's 7.2? No.
6.3, Allison.
Okay, there we go.
68. So LAC members was charging question charge assisted use. Okay, so we addressed question 1. That was Alfred's question in regard to the
Okay, yeah.
system. There was some questions about the King Edward Bay finances, but Raj encouraged to email him directly on questions about that. That was just more of a statement.
And I've just emailed you all the formula and that's the operating budget of King Edward Bay.
Okay, we've addressed the 94,000 breakdown, which makes which clarifies a lot. Attendee offered to request a list of assumptions regarding professional and contract services line items offline. Okay, so that was.
That's not our problem.
I think that was Chana.
I think
think
Shauna did that.
Yeah.
Okay, he's gonna do that. So.
Yeah, so I think he has followed up with that, haven't you,
Okay,
Chana?
we lost him.
No, sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, Patrick's incorporated those into the RFP. Thanks.
Yes.
Oh, perfect.
And
Thank you so much.
we're getting the studies, so thank you.
Thank you.
And you're satisfied with everything to date on this, Shauna?
Yes, thank you.
Then point number 5, LEC members request that the water break repairs and flag out and be not included in the cap, which you've removed, right, Raj?
2020 accounting items. So it's half of that is being charged back to the general fund.
From the carryover from 2019.
Yeah, so we carried the budget over in 2019. There was no spending on it. It was a $60,000 budget. I believe there was a total of about either 52 or 54,000 spent. So half of what was spent will be charged back to the general fund.
Okay, thank you. Item 6, staff volunteers to provide engineering drawings, King Edward Bay, Bluewater Park, etc. So that was included in the package from the agenda being sent out.
I think staff is doing pretty well on this list so far.
It is. And number 7, LEC member requested staff upload requested documents to the BIM site. Big hands clap for Steph for getting that done for us. Thank you very much.
And Annette, but I think we're going to be creating a page for all the committees to share with reference documents, but we're still building that page. So.
Excellent.
Okay, happy.
So I think we're getting to the end here.
We are at the end. The info items attached are just the notes from the September meeting, the rates bylaw, wellfield studies there.
And the wellfield studies, yeah. And that's it.
That's it.
Well, I just have one question. Have you any timeline, because others are asked as well, for the release of the final version of the Aquifer study, Patrick?
We're hoping to release that in advance of the February timeframe we talked about for completion of phase 1 work and bringing that back to the LACs. I don't know if I would say February at the latest, and hopefully earlier. That's,
and you've received preliminary, correct?
We have, yeah, we received the draft. There are some substantial, not issues with it, but aspects of the report that we feel need to be clarified. And some of that also has to do with looking at what our assumptions are for future growth and future demand. So we would like to have those issues well clarified and reflected in the report before we make it available to everybody. But the intent is that it will be public, available on all of these sharing sites that we're setting up.
Okay, thank you. I have a question for you, Raj. We had the joint finance committee meeting with the local area committees back in February. Are you having the same thing again this year, or what we just discussed for 2020, that's it?
Essentially, would depend on what the chair would like. I mean, if the chairs can request a joint meeting through staff, I'm not planning on having a joint meeting or setting up a joint meeting.
Okay. And I think in the LAC committee bylaws that there is a possibility of getting the chairs together, but that's something we can circle back on. I think it's more important we focus on the studies than next steps that are going to come up here in the new year, and where potentially we could have additional information meetings on them.
So the meetings that I would recommend scheduling would be typically a meeting in May or June to review the annual results. So shortly after the audit. And then again, I would recommend a fall meeting to go over the budget materials. Any meetings, and those meetings are recommended in accordance with the establishment bylaws of the LACs.
Right.
Beyond that, the chair can recommend additional meetings as required.
Okay. And then us committee members can have that discussion if we feel the need, depending on what's coming up here and more information released in the new year. And then I guess at some point it would be another community information meeting to be set too.
So just to clarify, the June meeting that I was talking about would be the community meeting. Okay. And then I would basically just propose an LAC meeting in the fall to review the budget.
Okay.
The upcoming 5 years.
And a June community meeting would also include, after the audit, that would be your actuals for 2020 spending. That would be.
So that would be our actuals, and according to the terms of reference, the actuals are supposed to be reviewed in a general, in a community meeting, whereas the budget comes forward to the LAC for discussion.
Okay.
When does the Vancouver Coastal Health Report come out, Patrick?
I believe that's in the meeting for the community as well. So that would be.
When does it come out? I think like this year it was late. That was
not usually published until summertime.
I think you have to have it done by June.
It has to be done in the spring, but it's not usually reviewed by Vancouver Coastal Health until July.
So
Might impact the timing of, I mean, we had recommended May or June timing to review the results, so it's timely, but you want to review that report at the same time, so that may impact the timing.
or we could slide the report into the budget meeting and
Yeah.
still do this audit. in
Yeah,
June.
we can circle back on those
Okay.
kind of things coming
Well,
up.
and we are likely going to have a meeting in February, focused on the water system improvements.
Yeah.
And well, there may be other meetings as part of that process, whether LAC or community meetings.
Okay. Sounds good. Any other committee members have any comments? Bring forward.
Let's go eat.
Go eat.
Going and cooking it.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody for sticking around after quitting time, and thanks for a very constructive meeting.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your volunteer effort and time. It's much appreciated.
And thanks for residents of Bluewater for attending today. And I think Brian Thomas Peter showed up here for a little while in the background too. But yes, very productive meeting. Thank you for all your time and effort that you put into and helping us out in Bluewater, and looking forward to these next big steps forward in the coming months and what that's going to entail, and maybe finally putting a lid on some of the water issues and crises that we've had for decades now. So
Yay.
Rob, it's only money. It's only
yeah,
money.
I know, but that's yeah. So it's
We're
no
gonna be
different than
happy.
it's no different than living in a high-rise condominium and finding out that their reserve funds have not been put away over the years enough for building upgrades.
At least we don't have strata fees. Yeah.
So, or
Very
save
good.
it for the roof of your house.
Namaste.
Okay, great.
Right.
That's it.
Thanks,
It's a
everybody.
wrap.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.